Hope you filthy animals had a Merry Christmas. I hope you guys will have a Happy New Year. I took the opportunity to shoot a video just before I go for another session off from work. And I wanted to talk about Breitling today. We did talk about Rolex and Omega and everything that I find bad about them. Um, Again, I love those brands, but obviously there are things that are not good. You guys know I own Breitling, so a Breitling, but and that I think will be well received amongst you because in all the other cases, you guys said, "Do you even own an Omega? Do you even own a Rolex?" Whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah, 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 you know that's how we are. Watch collectors, watch enthusiasts. We just get too emotional. So let's get to today's video. 5 things that I don't like about Breitling, and some of them I actually don't understand. So number one, movements from Tudor. There used to be a time where Breitling used to compete with Omega and Rolex. It was the three horsemen of luxury watches, not ultra luxury. I'm not talking Holy Trinity here, but Rolex, Omega, Breitling. It was always those three that were competing. You could find them in the same stores. And somehow Breitling decided that working with Tudor on movements and exchanging movements is a good thing. It's a good thing for Tudor because Tudor is the lesser brand. I know I'm gonna hit a lot of hate about this, but Tudor is supposed to be second, the cheapest option to Rolex. So, like it or not, it's always in the history of Tudor. I know it has many cool historical references, but it had it as a Rolex substitute. And Breitling is supposed and used to compete with Rolex. So where did that come from with Tudor? And I know Tudor makes solid movements. I know that. And Breitling decorates them even further and use them in the watches like the Heritage 2. But that is only good for Tudor because Breitling makes the B01 and gives it to Tudor. So you can buy a Chrono Black Bay and get half price the same movement that you get in an Navi timer. I think this is just a bad move from Breitling that cheapens the brand even further. I'm not even going to talk about number 2. I'm going to talk, obviously, ETA movements. I know that ETA movements or Celita are perfectly fine movements, but they are found in watches that cost $500-$600 all the way to maybe $1,000, $1,500. So why would a Breitling have an ETA movement and cheapen the brand even further? 38 hours of power reserve in a watch that's $3,000 is unacceptable. Unacceptable. The B01. That's number 3. B01. And now you're going to say, oh my God, that's an in-house movement. What's wrong about that? What's wrong about that is what Breitling claims is its strength. So the B01 is an in-house movement by Breitling. People say it's based on ETA movement, which is total BS. Maybe it shares some architecture, like most movement. You can only skin a cat few ways. But the movement itself is much larger. It's 36 millimeters, while the ETA equivalent is 26. So that alone tells you that maybe there's architectural elements, but it's a completely different movement. But Breitling says that it's a modular movement. So basically, they created this amazing base caliper, and then on top of that, they add the chrono, or in my watch's case, the world time complication. But what this does, yes, it gives them the flexibility to add or take out whatever they need, but what this does is make the movement thicker. You add layers and layers and layers on top of a movement, and it becomes thicker and thicker and thicker. That's why people love the El Primero, because it's a dedicated chronograph. It's thin. That creates thinness. When you add layers on top of the existing movement, it makes it thick. Hence, all the thickness in all the Breitling watches. You can buy a watch with a complication from Breitling that is less than 14 millimeters. It's just crazy. Now, 4 is the retail price, which is ridiculous. Like, you can't buy a watch with the ATA. The ATA movements start from 3,500. The super quartz starts at 3,000 almost. If you go to anything like Navitimer, all these kind of watches, they start at 8,000. So I think it's a little too much. And for that kind of money, if you're about to buy a new watch, you can go to other brands. You can buy any Omega at that price. You can buy a bunch of Rolexes for that price. And which leads me to the other thing, that is the secondary market price. I know we don't like to talk about this many times, and I'm one of them. I don't like to bring this up as a negative or positive, but in reality, there has been times where I sold watches and I got the hit at the beginning, especially when I didn't know much. When I tried to sell them as used watches, and I didn't know any better. And it happened to me that even when I knew, like my IWC that I sold recently, I did lose like $600. Back in the day, I would probably pay a whole lot more, lose a whole lot more. But now, since I knew better what I was doing, I lost less. But we have to talk about the secondary market price. Okay, so what if you want to get out of that watch? What happens then? So when you pay for a new watch, all that premium, and then it loses 70% of its value, sometimes even more, honestly. So I think it's crazy. I think it's crazy. They need to do something about it. And maybe part of that is point number 5. Why that happens is the vast catalog. It has so many different lines of watches with so many different configurations on every watch. You can get a Navitimer in any shade of the rainbow. You can get them in many different sizes. You can get 2 different kinds of divers watches and other watches that are not technically diver, but they have diver capabilities. So why do you need all that? Why do you need all that? So it's just crazy to me. All these different kinds of watches create confusion. Breitling has already many distinct models. They don't need to add confusion. They don't need to add too much. Like guys, we're very simple people. We like black dial, white dial, blue dial, maybe a green dial, and every now and then an oddball. That's it. We don't need all kinds of shades. We don't need all kinds of sizes. Give me a 42, give me a 43 for Breitling, and 90% of people would be happy. Make the watches a little thinner. Everybody would be happy. Drop the prices a little bit. Tighten production so they don't cost like, they don't worth 20 cents on the dollar a couple of years after you buy it, and that should solve the issue. But these are things that are very elementary, and Breitling is supposed to not belong to a big conglomerate like Swatch, but it is owned by a fund, and that fund needs at some point to check out. This is something that you guys need to keep in mind. Yes, it's supposed to be an independent, but still it's owned by a fund, and the fund bought Breitling because they want to make money on Breitling. And that's the issue here. And that's why they dumped all the watches when John Kern took over the company. they wanted to change the identity. They wanted to go back to heritage pieces because that's what's trendy now, heritage pieces. Meanwhile, companies that worth nothing, in my opinion, like Richard Mille, they bet on innovation, they bet on new designs, they bet on crazy stuff, and somehow it's working for them. But all these companies with history, they go back to their roots, and we still see the same 40s, 50s, 60s models, 70s models. Oh my God, with the 70s models coming back over and over and over again. And like there's no any innovation anymore. That's it. It stopped in the 50s and 60s and 70s. That's it. We don't have anything more. And that I find very annoying. Breitling, I understand why they went back in some models to the heritage, but okay, do something more. Do something more. They stopped all the previous watches. It was very flashy, very big. I understand trends change, but okay. I think it's getting a little too old, and that's my opinion. That's my thing with Breitling. I love Breitling, but this needs to change. Well, let me know what you think. What do you think about Breitling? Can they still compete with Omega and Rolex? Or they really compete with Tudor nowadays? Thank you so much for watching. Until the next one. Ciao.